Hey there, welcome to this Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video. Today we're going to be having a look at a tier list specifically for Into the Dark. The game's only been out a day, so this is going to be very early thoughts, a little bit of speculation, what might be good. Take everything with a pinch of salt. This is just throwing something out there very early. We'll review in a couple of months, see how right we were. So let's start off by looking at some of the maps here. So these are the critical operations packet. This is the footage from Class Half Dead, a really great content creator. You should check him out if you're not familiar, although I suspect you already are. So one of the biggest changes here is that we're going indoors. So there's all these walls in the way. We need to move around those, and there's also going to be doors to try and navigate through. These are going to block visibility, and also you're not going to be able to measure directly through them. You have to go around. So consequences of this, I think one of the big changes is it's probably going to favour elite teams. So for example, we were to take this room on the left hand side here as an example. If you were to send a guy in there, let's say it's a Marine with 3 APL, he charge, fight, shoots, kills 2 guys. Whereas previously you would have had the whole board being able to take shots onto him. Now you're just going to have the ones who are going to be able to see this room. So I think it's going to really help more killy operatives and potentially more durable ones as well to try and actually survive that kind of fire which might be coming in from these heftier operatives. I think that's something we saw a little bit with the previous edition of Arena as well, albeit that was a little bit more killy primaries and some secondaries as well, coinciding a little bit with elites for Arena. But I think that, I think the more killy teams and elite teams are probably going to see a bit of a buff there. Other things I think are going to be really good, 3 APL. So again, looking at this map, if we were to say these are 4-inch squares, if somebody wants to get from here, get onto this point turn 1, it's going to cost them an AP to open this door. So you can either have a regular guy move up, pop it open for you, and then the chaff model goes through and finishes up on this point. But an elite model can do all that themselves. So being able to move dash, open the door, and finish up here. So apart from just moving indoors, there are some other key changes for Into the Dark. Blast, Splash and Torrent have gained the Lethal 5 rules. It's going to make those a bit more killy. Indirect's reduced to a 3-inch range if you want to be using the indirect special rule. So that means that grenades are probably going to be less good at hitting operatives in cover from far away. If you're shooting through engaged models, you're going to get -1 attack on your shooting. So this is something which we weren't really aware of from the Warhammer Plus battle report. So maybe this is something which might buff the more chaff teams a little bit. So you've got important model at the back, you've got one of your weaker bodies in the way a little bit further up, and that's going to try and provide some kind of cover type thing, reducing the incoming fire. The guard action got introduced, so as expected this was some kind of overwatch, and then maybe a point blank overwatch as well for if you get charged. One thing which we weren't maybe aware of was that you could also use it to do a fight action. So if you're on engage, you pop guard, somebody charges you, you can potentially fight first, and going first in melee is a really important thing. There were some restrictions to attack ops as well. So no longer valid are sabotage from infiltration, vantage from recon, and then hold the line and seize ground from security. What this means is that, let's say you've got one of your bespoke teams, you've got your 3 faction attack ops, you're running security. That means you've now only got 7 cards to build your 6-card attack op deck from. So maybe if you've got 2 bad faction attack ops, it's going to be a little bit rough now. I think security especially, those were 2 of the better ones. So now you've got things like Plant Banner, which is going to be really hard to get into the opponent's DC. Central Control, I think actually could be harder to score now on these maps. Some of the missions look like getting to the centre might be a little bit more of a slog. And then you've also got things like Protect Assets, which is not very easy to score. And just generally, I think you're not going to be left with as many options as you were before. What's interesting from this though is Seek and Destroy isn't on this list, so that's going to be keeping the same number of things we've got at the minute, and I think that might potentially come into play a little bit more. The new missions look interesting as well. Lower scoring primaries potentially. So if we were to compare like for like some of the missions, like say Awakened Data Spirits, that's just scoring 2 VPs for the central ones at the end of the game now instead of every turning point, which was 1 point per turn. And then you've also got things like one of the missions is 3 points. You get a point if you hold it. So that's maximum 12 points over the course of the game anyway. So that's going to result in lower scores. Another thing is that turning point 1, you'll be moving up the board, you'll have doors in the way. Potentially depending on how the layout is, it might be difficult for you to actually get on some of those objectives and be scoring things turn 1. I think it might be a little bit more cagey and resulting in lower scores. as an upshot of that, tac ops are more important. Again, some of them might be more difficult to score. So I've already mentioned central control, things like behind enemy lines is going to be near impossible now. I think it's going to be, just generally the game's going to be lower scoring and decided by finer margins. Some quick assumptions that we're going to make for the course of this video. So the game's only been out today, we've not got any kind of FAQ and errata yet. There's few things which are a little bit less clear. So we're going to assume that you're not able to do forward deploys on most of the maps. So the thinking here is that as a condition of a lot of the forward deploys, it says you need to be a certain distance away from the enemy's drop zone. So taking Pathfinder, drone controller, forward deploying your drone, for example, you need to be at least 3 inches away from the enemy DZ. But if there's walls in the way, then you can't measure the enemy DZ, so you can't really forward deploy them maybe. We'll see how that pans out. But I think out of the 9 critical operation missions, there's only 2 of them where you can actually do a forward deploy. There's no moving through walls, so the walls have some special rule that says you can't move through them. So things like Breacher Boy, Windblade Riding Ingress, and the Hatch Cutter for the New Imperial Navy, we're going to say that those can't go through walls. I think that might be a nice thing. It would have probably been a little bit OP to just be able to walk through walls. Some of the teams have more than 1 grenade as well. So, for example, looking at the Galapagos, they've got 3 guys with frag grenades. The expectation is that they'll get some kind of balanced data slate or errata, which will just drop them down to 1 grenade for the team. And then area of effect attacks, so things like the Demo Mine, Bomb Squig, the Phobos, kind of Saboteur Mine as well. Thinking is that they currently don't have Lethal 5 rules as written, even though they are very similar to things like Blast and Splash. So we'll treat those as just not having Lethal 5 for the purposes of this video. Okay, preamble out of the way, let's get into the different teams. So we're just going to be looking at the bespoke teams and going to be ranking them from lowest to highest. So we're going to have go through the D tier first, finishing up with S tier. And these roles can be ranked within the tiers as well. So the ones on the left hand side will be the best within that tier, the ones on the right will be the worst. So bottom right will be the worst team in the game, going up to best team in the game in S tier at the top there. As I say, this is all speculation, it's a bit of fun. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but if you do disagree, feel free to comment down below. I'd be very interested to hear what you think. So, the worst team in the game. They were not one of my favourite teams on open board. I think they suffered even more in arena, and that's Phobos. So, as mentioned, they don't get that lethal 5 on the mine. They've got not great shooting, not great melee, not great durability as well. They've got some tricks to stay concealed, but that's not going to help you too much if you get in charge, which I think will happen a lot more. And then also the track target ability, which was one of the big unique things that Phobos got. Basically every team gets that now with the guard action. So sad times for them. Next up is the crew. This is one of the new teams. Again, we've only had the game a day. Flicking through, it seems like they might be a little soft compared to some of the others. So 8 wounds, but only 11 bodies. If we're comparing that to the other top teams, I think Hunter Clade get 11 bodies, and man for man I would say they're better. The double retaining cover's nice, or retaining a crit save, but a lot of the guns are just hitting on 4s and you've not got massive access to rerolls. I think, just from a glance, they're going to have a little bit of a rough time in Into the Dark. Next one up, Vanguard. So I'm not 100% sure about this one. They've still got some great things going for them. They've got lots of activations, bodies to go forwards. They've got the spotter who will still continue to do work. They'll still be able to play the mission well, and they're still going to have that lethality with things like the plasma, melter, grenade launcher, sniper. They've still got some output. I think they're suffering from lack of melee. So when we were mentioning guard before, saying being able to fight first is really good. I think being able to have somebody who can stand on the other side of a hatchway on guard and then have the opponent have to shoot them off and not just be able to melee and run through all in the same activation. I think it's going to be to their disadvantage. In a similar vein then, we've got Pathfinders. So these are even worse than Vanguard in terms of melee. They've got supporting fire that can shoot into combat, but that really is it for them. The other thing they really had going for them before was Markolites, but you're going to have a lot less visibility than you were before because of all the walls blocking the way. So I think they'll struggle to light people up and then delete the targets they want to. I think they're going to get overrun a lot of the time. And yeah, the guns are still really powerful, but potentially even lower than C tier. We'll see how it goes. Corsairs. These are one of the teams which I think can be pretty swingy. Not many rerolls, but that free dash should do some work. So being able to move up to a door, take a shot, and then dash out the way to the side out of visibility, that's really good. A lot of them have power swords too, so they do have some kind of decent melee output. Guard should help with that as well. And there's the deadly ambush ability, so if you can now park them around a corner on engage, you should be able to get that off more often. So if we're talking about some kind of square room, you can put them back in one corner, enemy comes through, you might be able to jump on them there. One thing which I think takes a little bit of a hit would be plunderers. So turn 1, if there's closed doors in the way, you're not going to be able to do that plunderers free dash because you're not going to be able to measure maybe where the nearest objective marker is to ensure you finish closer to it. Bit of a mixed bag, but I think overall Corsairs are in a slightly better place now, and I am interested to run them at some point, I think, especially if they get a buff. Next up, Warp Coven. So the kind of standard open board list you might have seen would have been 3 Sorcerers, a Soul Reaper and 4 Zangors. That's running security and your faction tack-ups aren't great, so I think now you're probably more likely to go 3 Sorcerers and 6 Zangors to get the recon. They're okay, they've got some decent-ish melee output, they can get some rerolls as well, and things like the Flux Blast get a nice buff. Overall though, I think they're still lacking in tools compared to the other specialist teams. The Zangors themselves are okay, but not amazing. I think they'll be okay, but not too much better than that. Next up, probably my favourite team at the minute, sad to see it down in B tier. So Harley Quinns, still got 3 APL and Fly, those are both really good. I think being able to fly over enemies is a really good thing to have in Arena. It lets you pick your targets more, you can't get blocked out, and it's just the kind of freedom to do what you want. I do think though, in an indoor environment, you can't make the kind of moves that you would be able to do before, so going 9 inches across, you might be more restricted, you might just be kind of shuffling around objectives. I think there'll be a lot more dog piles and kind of meat grinder kind of missions where you're just having to get onto points, and then you've got a team with only 67 wounds. Your Death Jester's going to struggle to line up the shots it wanted, whereas before it could dominate a whole board with the right piece of terrain. Yeah, I think they are generally suffering into the dark. And combined with a balanced data slate, more melee, lots of critical hits coming through on them, I think they're going to be a bit too soft for it. Then Wormblade, Shooty Horde, they're hit a little bit into the dark, so their Court Ambush kind of wants them to go from conceal to engage. But then, yeah, you kind of want to be on engage already to be doing your guard action. I think the Locust will be good, so being able to make those kind of pile-in moves, that extra charge after you've fought in combat, that'd be really good. Being able to parry somebody out even if they're going first, that's, yeah, a nice thing to have. The Kellamorph's going to be just lethal on this, so it's going to be within 6 inches a lot of the time. In general, Wormblade have shorter range weapons as well, so that'll kind of suit them. I think they'll still be a decent team, just probably still not one of the super strongest for me. Next up's another one of the new teams in the Elatidian Starstriders. So these ones I'm still not 100% sure on. I feel like this is one of the ones where the skill ceiling might be a little bit higher. It feels like they've got decent durability, so you could, for example, auto-retain 1 for cover, and then your Electromaester is going to give you a reroll. And then you've got Strat Ploy if you're near an objective to take only half damage on the first hit. So even though they're 7 wound models, they're going to be not too soft if they're on an objective. I think they've also got some decent killer potential. Those airstrikes are pretty lethal. So you've got what's basically a silent melter shot that you can fire twice a game with anybody for free. And then, yeah, you can also do some kind of really nasty blast weapon. So something like 3-5 blast or a 3-inch blast. That's going to gain lethal 5 indoors as well. Barrage, so you're not getting cover, I think. I would have to check that, but yeah. I think they're an interesting team for sure. Could go up or down. This is kind of a first stab at where they might finish up. Yeah, very interested to see how that pans out for them. Next up, Commandos. So their shooting got a massive buff with Into the Dark. Things like Rocket Boy, Dynamite, Stick Bombs, Yeah, really good things that are now getting lethal 5, and they've also got Daka 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 as well. So a strat ploy that says if you roll a crit, then you can turn one of your fails into a normal hit. That's going to make their shooting much more lethal than it was before. On top of that, they are 10 wound melee models a lot of the time. Just being able to get into combat, and yeah, I think they're going to be doing a lot better out of this. You've not got opponents on vantages, so charging from conceal will be really good. B tier at the minute, I can potentially see them going higher, although I think they'll still struggle into the top teams just because of lack of AP. Then next up, Novitiates. The Flamers got a buff. I think the Faith Light mechanic's still really strong. I think they've got a lot of play, things like the chain activation with the Superior, but they do come across as a little bit soft to me. So 7 wound models, so 71 wounds total. I think they're going to be very soft. They're not great in melee, dying in 2 hits to a lot of things. I think top of B tier, we could potentially see them going lower. Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed because I've just recently painted up Novitiate, so yeah, I'm going to be putting them back on the shelf for a little bit, I think. Next one might be a little bit controversial. So Blooded, which I rated as one of the worst teams when they were on open board, now putting them all the way up in A tier. So they've got decent melee output, they've got some nice ploys, for example Glory Kill, which is going to let them take down some of the tougher targets. So we're going to see some of the more elite teams or things with bigger operatives, that's going to be able to help them get kills there. They've got the Ogrin, which is going to be really good in melee. That's going to be able to block things off and kind of control rooms by itself, I think. And then you've also got the Blooded tokens, which are going to let you auto-retain. So that combos really well with Guard. So, for example, you got your Vet Guard, Plasma Gunner. He goes on Overwatch. Now he's only hitting on 5s with reroll 1s maybe. Whereas your Blooded is going to be retaining 1 automatically. And if you're firing a melter gun, that might be enough for you. Next up, the Navy. So saying that they can't go through walls with the hatch cutter, but even then the weld shut's really good. They've got guys who've got a bit of tankiness, so you've got the big shield there. I think that's really interesting. That's going to give them a lot of play. They've got loads of opportunity to get rerolls, group activations. They've got a mix of melee and shooting. What else? They've also got a really good grenade in their Grenadier. That's going to be getting lethal 5 up now. Yeah, just generally, I think a very solid team. They look interesting, especially into the dark. Open board, not so much, but I think they're going to be in A. I could potentially see them pushing higher, maybe. I feel like there's a bit of a skill ceiling to them. We'll see how that goes, but yeah, very excited to see how those ones go. Next up, Galapagos. This is just a crazy tanky team. So you've got the 4 big guys, 3 mutants, 4 of the smaller glitchlings, and then 4 of the mutant vermin. I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, it's something like 167 wounds worth of models when you take into account the FNPs. Compare that to the previous highest, which I think was Chaos Demons Plague Bearers at 144 wounds, 145 wounds. That's just insane tankiness. And they've got some ploys as well, which are going to let them do things like strat phase dashes or potentially retaining a defense dice if they roll high enough on the fails. So yeah, I think they're going to be really hard to kill. They're just playing a different game to everybody else. I can see them maybe struggling to score points. If the small ones get shut off, then your 4 big guys are going to be left there doing all the work. Or maybe your big guys will get focused down and then you've got no killing potential. I think, yeah, they're going to probably settle around about A tier, but I could see them in S as well. Whereas I think what's going to happen is they're going to come in at S to start with. People are kind of going to figure out how they play, and then they'll start to drop down a bit. I'll put them top of A. I could maybe see them higher, and yeah, just at a glance, I would say they might be quite good on open board as well, because they're not as slow as you might have thought. I thought the Nightmare Hawks might have got 4-inch movement, but they got 6, and then the Glitchlings can ignore vantage points as well. So yeah, some cool stuff there. Moving into S tier then. So 3 teams left. We've got Intercession, Hunter Clade, and Legionary. So Intercession, I think, is the worst of these, but still really good. The chapter traits that they've got lets them have some kind of flex, and you can make decisions there. They've got one of those that can ignore Overwatch. I think being able to choose between the mix of intercessors or assault intercessors gives you some flex there as well. You can do things like double shoot with the intercessor. So you could, for example, move shoot and then go on guard. Something else that the Legionary can do with their malicious volleys too. Yeah, I think Assault Intercessors just look very chunky. Melee is going to be really good in Into the Dark. They've not got a huge amount of depth to them, I don't think. So they are just a beefy team with great profiles and lots of attacks and also some rerolls. But I think they're going to be really strong and just a very solid team. The Legionary, these are the guys that I'm working on right now. I'm very excited to try these out. I think there's some standout things for Legionary straight away. So they're quite a killy team. Things like the Belfire Acolyte here. He's going to get lethal 5 now on his Fire Blast, so that's going to make him even more killy. You've got Nurgle to reduce your damage that's coming in. Being able to stick around and have 1 or 2 guys hold a room all by themselves, that's going to be really good. You're going to have Nurgle's Implacable tactic as well to ignore Overwatch penalties, so putting somebody on guard with a melter gun, maybe reducing the enemy defense by 1 with their attack ploy. Yeah, you can just wait for an enemy to move into range and you could be hitting on 3s still. Super strong. That's if you go Nurgle. I think Khorne's got a lot more play as well, so there might be some risk with the Khorne one in that you might be able to get shot off more with guard. I think you're going to be able to make more use of the pile-ins, so your opponent's going to be bunched up more. It's going to be more melee focused. I can see you being able to charge in, kill something, and then the 3-inch move has got more flex in it than the Wormblade one, for example. So there the Locust would just have to make a charge of 3 inches, whereas here, because it's a normal move, you could use it to do something like you charge in, stay outside 4 inches of the nearest visible target, and then use that 3-inch move to get within 2 inches of somebody so you can shoot them through the cover. Or you might just use it to tuck back into a corner out of visibility. So you've killed somebody, move back into a corner, and then go on guard, and then your opponent's going to have to come through and take a shot without being able to draw a bead on you first. And then top of the table is Hunter Clade. So yeah, you got the 5 Sicarians, so you can either take them as melee models who are going to be shutting off rerolls. That 6-inch no rerolls aura is going to be coming into play a lot more often. Now everything's going to be closer together. They are pretty killy as well, the Infiltrators, both in shooting and melee. You could also go with Rust Stalkers, so they could be getting either a double fight or a free fight and then doing a mission action. You've also got things like equipment, which will let you do mission actions for cheaper. You've got chain activations on the alpha. You've got equipment that can let you ignore Overwatch penalties, so you can have Plasma Caliber hitting on 3s with potential rerolls from your Imperative, I believe they're called. Yeah, I think they've just got so much going for them right now. 11 activations as well. I think they are the standout team in the new format. We'll see how wrong I am in the future, but yeah, I think Hunter Clade have gone from being one of the worst teams in the game pre-balanced data slate to now being one of the best on open board, and I would say the outright best in Into the Dark. Okay, cheers, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. As I say, it is incredibly premature. There's probably even some rules which I might have misread. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm just excited about Into the Dark in general. Wanted to get something out there as kind of yeah, we'll see how I am in 2 months. But yeah, I want to get some games in. Alright, thanks. See you in a bit. Bye bye.